Hi guys, thanks for joining me today. I'm Marilyn and my channel is Making with Marilyn. Now on today's video, we're going to sublimate this huge 40-ounce tumbler. This is a PYD Life tumbler. It has a removable handle and that makes it pretty easy to get your design to fit around it correctly. I'll use a design that I got off of Creative Fabrica. Once I have this around the tumbler, I'll tape it down with some tape and then I'll also use some shrink wrap. Now to get the shrink wrap to shrink to the tumbler, I'm going to use this heating tool. To remove the screws to get the handle off, I have a screwdriver. It's a Phillips head screwdriver. Now when I cut my image down, I used a metal ruler and a rotary tool, but you can cut yours down any way you like. Now to determine what size to cut my design down to, I use this little tumbler measuring tape. I just got this recently. I love it. I got 2 of these off of Amazon for $5.99. Now, when I looked earlier today, they were on sale for $4.69. So if you ever struggle with measuring your tumblers, these are very handy. I'll also use the sublimation oven that you see behind me. And then lastly, I printed this out on an Epson EcoTank 15,000. Now that wasn't meant to be a sublimation printer. It's not marketed to be one. But I put sublimation ink in it instead of the ink that came with it, and I use it for my main sublimation printer. So if you're interested in seeing this project, sit back, relax, and let's get started. Now, before I do, if you haven't subscribed, please consider doing that. If you do, make sure you tap that bell and then select the all notification. That way YouTube lets you know anytime I upload new content. Now in the intro, I told you I was going to use my sublimation oven, but I don't think I talked about this. This is a thermometer that you put in your sublimation oven. They're very inexpensive on Amazon. I've used 3 different ovens for sublimation, and none of them were actually accurate, meaning if you set it to 356, it wasn't really going to be 356. So when I'm using a sublimation oven, I always use this, and I adjust the temperature that I set it to until I get to the correct temperature on my thermometer. Now I've already prepped this, meaning I cleaned it with rubbing alcohol. I always clean my tumblers with 90% rubbing alcohol. So now I need to take these little screws out. You know, there are screws on the bottom that hold your handle on. It has a Phillips head type of tip, or head. I don't know how to say that. But you have to use a Phillips head screwdriver to get those out. And lay them over to the side. Don't lose them like I tend to do. Okay, once you take those out, this handle just pops off. And so you have these little metal things that you're going to stick back into the handle when it's time to put it back on. And of course, you'll put the screws back in too. Now, I want to talk about the designs that I find on Creative Fabrica for 40-ounce tumblers. They come with curves in them because they're assuming that what you're putting it on is tapered. These PYD Life tumblers are not tapered, which I actually love the fact that they're not tapered because I've never liked to work with tapered tumblers. But what that means is I oversized my designs so that I would have at least 3 inches by 9.5 inches for the part that goes on the bottom. And then for the part that goes on top, 6 inches by 12.5 inches. Now, knowing that they don't have to be curved means I can do a lot more designing my own designs for these, which I look forward to doing in the future. Okay, these are similar to the straight 20-ounce tumblers that I do a lot, but you don't have to use as much tape because you are going to use the shrink wrap. Now, this is the bottom of the tumbler, and so I'm going to go ahead and tip my tumbler up. I want the seam to be on the back side, and I have my paper resting all the way on the table. All right. Once I do that, I actually want to move my paper up just a little bit. I set it flat on the table to get it straight, but I don't really want that to go around the beveled edge. So now I'm going to go ahead and flip it over, and I think I'll go ahead and put one piece of tape on it. That way the edges stay together. And then now I can just kind of slide it down until I like where it is. And that looks good. Now this bottom part might very, very slightly be tapered because my paper doesn't go quite all the way around. I'm okay with that on this design because see, you just have white up here. If you had color all the way to the edge of the paper, you would want to cut this so that these two edges meet. See how there's a gap right now? Again, because there's white by the gap, I don't care. That doesn't matter to me. And for tumblers like this that are a little bit tricky, I do like to use designs that are forgiving, meaning they have a lot of white that matches your tumbler. And so if you make some mistakes, there's so much white in it that it's not going to be as noticeable. Okay, I am going to do one more piece of tape just because I love tape. And then we're going to do the top part. Now this top part is a little bit tricky because you have these, I guess I'll call them cleats back here. So the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and flip my tumbler over, flip my design over, and get it kind of how I want it. Now my choices are to put slits in both sides of this or just one side, and so it'd be off a little bit. Let me show you. If I just put the slits in one side, then this will end up right by the cleats. I think that's what I want to do. So I'm going to put it back down on the table. I have the paper up against the cleats, and I think I have it too tight on that top cleat. Loosen that up a little bit. I'm going to wrap it around, and then I have to take some scissors and cut where that cleat is. So I apologize, I didn't mention scissors in the intro. Now, if you notice down here, it's all just white. So it is not going to show if I don't get this one quite right. Okay, that looks fine. Now up here, there's blue. So I need to have that just a little bit more accurate. To do that, I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of tape in the middle so that I don't have to worry about this paper shifting. Okay. Now I'm just going to start a small slit where I think it goes. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. This always makes me so nervous. Now, this little cleat, remember, it's going to get covered up. And so my cut isn't perfect. I kind of went at an angle, and I can't pull this down yet. So before I pull this down and rip my paper, let's go ahead and cut a little bit more off on this side. Okay, much, much better. Now I have this little spare piece of paper I'm going to cut off. See the little blue piece right there? All right, let me go ahead and put a little bit of tape on this, and then I'm going to hold it up so you can see it really closely. So far I'm liking how this wrap job is turning out. Hopefully I'm not too far away from the top that you don't see white at the top, because the top of this image does have blue in it. So if I have it too far down, you're going to see a little white strip at the top of my tumbler. I think I'm okay. I think I'm okay. Just a little bit more tape. Again, I love tape. If you watch my videos, you know I like tape. But I'm not going to do quite as much on this one as I do when I'm doing straight skinny tumblers in a tumbler press. I'm going to rely on the shrink wrap to do its job. If I find that it doesn't do a great job at the top just using shrink wrap, then next time I'll use tape. But hopefully that's going to do it. All right, so here's what it looks like. Here's what the top looks like. Now there's a little bit of a gap right here. And the only things that are close to this end are a couple of butterflies. So I am tempted to tape it right where the butterflies are. I think I will. Because as it bevels in, your paper has to bend somewhere. And I don't really want it bending where that butterfly is. So we'll tape that down. And then this one's far enough away from the bottom. It starts about right here. Hopefully you can see that I'm not worried about taping that. But this one is really close to the bottom. All right, it is time to shrink wrap this. I have this little heat gun, and you can turn this handle to store it away. It makes it easier to store. And then just flip it like that to use it. I should have a heat-resistant glove over here. So I have this huge silicone glove, and I like to use this when I'm using the oven because it protects you all the way up to here. The ones I usually use with tumbler presses, they just protect to here. Well, this is usually where you burn yourself in an oven. So I'm going to use this large one. Now I wouldn't need it for this part. So I'm going to take my shrink wrap. Hopefully this is the right size of shrink wrap. Okay, I had a wider piece that'll cover the top. And then what I'm going to do is, I have this piece that's left over from a prior 40-ounce tumbler. I'm going to use it for the bottom half. Let's go ahead and start with the bottom half. I'm just going to place this over this bottom. And then I'm not going to have my hand close to the heat, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn this on low. And I like to get, let me turn it off so you can hear me. I like to get this top bent over after I secure this part. Now you don't need to get your heat gun super close to the shrink wrap. You also don't have to have the shrink wrap so tight that as it continues to shrink in the oven that it's going to rip. Hopefully I don't have that too tight. I'm going to put a little bit more right here. And by a little bit, I meant a little bit. All right, this is going to be hard to stand up because of that shrink wrap. Here's my wider piece. Now, the concern for me is always these cleats, if they're going to puncture the shrink wrap. Okay, so there's how I have it. The excess is about halfway down here and halfway up there. So what I want to do first is kind of tighten down this side over here. It has a seam there. So I'm going to tighten that and up here. Now I am going to go ahead and use my glove. Because I'm going to be blowing this closer to my hand. And I'm going to go ahead and leave this on real time because I think this is an area where some people get stuck or they're really nervous about it. So if you do a lot of shrink wrapping, just fast forward. But I am going to leave this in real time. Now I want to work my way toward those cleats. And that looks like a wreck because of those cleats. All right, see all those wrinkles? We're going to hope that those don't cause an issue, and I think they'll flatten out as they're in the oven because this shrink wrap does continue to shrink. Now, the last thing I want to do is I do want to go around the top because remember, that's where I had my biggest concerns, whether the paper was tall enough. So let's get that down nice and secure. Okay, I am going to call that good. I'm going to go ahead and bring, all right, I lied. I want to do this right here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring the oven over here, change the camera angle, and just hope for the best. These things always make me nervous. To turn the oven on, you just press this button for 3 seconds. Now you're seeing the settings that I used last time I used it. I used a temperature of 421 and it can fall down. You can put a lower end and an upper end. It can go between 418 and 421. And then I have 12 minutes on here. To change the time, because I just want to do this for 6 minutes, I'm going to turn this button until it gets down to 6. Once it gets there, I press it one time and that sets it. And now it's actually preheating. Let's go ahead and get this thermometer in here so I can see if 421 is what I really want. The manual says to cook these at 356 degrees. I'm okay if it goes over that by some, but I definitely don't want it at 421. Again, sublimation ovens I've used, they do not get to the temperature set here, and that's why I use that thermostat. I want to know what the true temperature is in there. So the real temperature is somewhere between 360, 370, and I am perfectly fine with that. Now, it had gotten up to temperature. With me opening the door, I think it fell below temperature. It's on 6 minutes, so when that hits the right temperature again, this will start counting down. And I want to go ahead and move that a little bit more in the center. Okay, those beeps signaled that it was up to temperature, and the 6 minutes started counting down. That took maybe about 3 minutes to get back up to temperature, maybe just 2. All right, let's go ahead and turn this off. To do that, you hold this down for 3 seconds again. Now I'm right-handed, so doing this is a little awkward. Okay, we set it up there for a minute. And then you always want to get your shrink wrap off as soon as you can, because it's going to be hard to take off later. Let me grab a second glove. All right. I want to go ahead and do this here, and then I'll turn the camera angle around and show it to you more closely. Actually, maybe I'll just take the shrink wrap off now, and then we'll look at it together. All right, we're going to fight through the rest of this at a better angle. All right, let's see if I can't get the rest of this shrink wrap off. Now, this has cooled down enough that I can handle it. It's still warm, but it's not hot. So I have a little bit of shrink wrap left to go. And I'm just going to take my weeding tool and kind of puncture. I'm going to go under it and kind of puncture it and pull up. Once shrink wrap cools, it comes off in little pieces, unless you're really lucky. And I wasn't. So again, I'm just putting it under there, pulling up, and taking this off in pieces. Now this is kind of angling down. Maybe I'll get a big chunk of it off. Look at the inside of the shrink wrap. The sublimation came all the way through there. Now this paper that I'm using, this is Koala brand. It's the only brand that I have in the huge 13 by 19. My go-to paper is usually HTB Ront, but I just don't have any this large. It'd be interesting to know if I used HTB Ront, would it come all the way through like that? I don't know, because I've never had it bleed through anything else. And this is why you want to get that off as soon as possible. Not during a video. Oops, about dropped it. Okay, I finally have it all off, and this paper is just sliding down. Let's see how that looks. It looks really good. Now you can obviously see where the seam is because of the design, but look how good those colors look. Very happy with that. That bottom looks good. Let's hope the top looks just as good. All right, let me turn it around. You'll see it before I do. That's pretty. Look at the seam. I think I did a pretty good job. Again, you can tell where the seam is because of the design. But I think that looks pretty good. Look at this tumbler. I'm going to bring it closer to the camera. Okay, I am thrilled with how this turned out. The only thing I need to do is I need to go ahead and get the handle back on. Now, the way you can tell if it goes like this or this is those screw holes need to be in the bottom. So we're just going to put it right back over. And then, I moved my screwdriver. Let me see if I can just get it hand tight or finger tight. All right, we're going to tighten those back down. but you don't want to just turn and turn until you strip the screw out. I put the lid on, and I love how this turned out. The beauty of the 40-ounce tumblers like this that are skinny down here and wide up here is they'll actually fit in most vehicles' cup holders. A 30-ounce tumbler doesn't fit in a lot of cars' cup holders. And so if a 20-ounce isn't quite big enough, but you want something you can take on the go with you, you might consider getting a 40-ounce tumbler. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. And until my next one, bye-bye.